Ocarina of Time, one of the best games of all time. Still, since its 1998 debut, there's no legal way to play this masterpiece in proper HD and definitely not 4K. And sure, Nintendo could have upscaled the 3D version on Nintendo Switch, but they didn't, and now we're in the Switch 2 era. So here is how to make the Hero of Time's first quest the best it can ever be, and yes, surpassing the 1998 original and 2011 handheld overhaul. So be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press notification bell as we're going for 2025 likes. In the last 10 plus years, all Zelda remakes and remasters have been developed outside of Nintendo's offices. The remakes have been handled by Zreo, while the 3D remasters by Tantalus. Still, on May 22nd, 2025, Nashweedle said that the Ocarina of Time remake is handled by Nintendo themselves. And if true, that will be the first Zelda remake, prepared in-house since 2013's The Wind Waker HD. As we all know, apart from a slightly controversial visual change, this one is the most beloved of the HD remakes and remasters, with the best system integrations through the Wii U gamepad. Well, the Nintendo Switch 2 offers the same opportunity, but in 4K, HDR and 60 frames per second. A dual screen experience is not really needed, but we could do it through Zelda Note, so there's a possibility to maintain the dual screen experience from Ocarina 3D. The 2011 version that released over 14 years ago as of the upload of this video, and it added a lot of features that needs to be kept in a final Ultimate 4K remake. Most of all, the mirrored Master Quest, which is more of a randomizer with change enemy positions, item locations and different puzzles, plus double damage. Next, you have the boss challenge in Link's house, where you can replay those climactic battles. All of these alongside motion/gyroscope controls should carry over. So that is settled. But let's stay with controls for a little longer, since the Nintendo Switch 2 offers something the N64 and 3DS didn't have in 1998 and 2011, a second analog stick. Want to control the camera. In fact, Ocarina of Time is the only remade/remastered 3D Zelda game to not offer any dual analog camera controls. This is the most obvious change when even Majora's Mask 3D from 2015 has it. No doubt it will make the experience far more pleasant. And when you're at it, the Switch 2 has 2 more trigger buttons than the 3DS, allowing for control possibilities that are closer to what we're used to from playing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Speaking of, let's move over to the artstyle, since Ocarina has always been seen with Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess to be the more realistic artstyle Zeldas. Naturally, this one once again needs a refresh, and here we need to address the attempts made by fans. The Unreal Engine 4 and 5 art styles, which look great, but I believe that there's a middle ground that Nintendo will aim for. Though I have to say, Yianni Papazis' vision from 2020 is a really solid example which we'll use soon in this video. The point is, the new art style needs to preserve the original feeling of this timeless classic and prevent Ocarina from getting compromised in the visual department. Same goes for the performance of the only 99 game on Metacritic with its arrival in its new home. As we want this experience with similar performance to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond Switch 2 edition. No, not in 120 frames per second, but in upscaled 4K, 60 FPS and HDR. This requires a compromise in visual fidelity, but will still allow for visuals way above Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The reason for this is that Ocarina of Time has a much smaller map and less rendering. And this is the thing, just like Metroid Prime Remastered was a first taste of the visuals of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, well, at least for the Nintendo Switch, so should Ocarina of Time 4K be a taste of the power and maybe even the visuals of the next open-air Zelda game in development for the Nintendo Switch 2. Well, a likely change in a 4K remake is an expansion of Era of the Hero of Time Hyrule. This is a trick that has already been pulled by the Final Fantasy VII re-trilogy at Square Enix, most of all with 2024 Rebirth's open world map. Naturally, we don't need this kind of size, but rather something that can offer a fresh and somewhat new game experience to Ocarina, plus some more points of interest in Hyrule Field and on the path from here to Kokiri Forest, Kakariko Village, Goron City, Zora's Domain, Gerudo Valley and Lake Heidi, the locations and regions that we know and love. More on those soon, but first we have to address the first location you're directed to after leaving Kokiri Forest, Hyrule Castle and Town, since both could see significant changes on the Nintendo Switch too, all while staying true to prior versions. First and foremost, making the entire town accessible and in 3D, the original cut idea for Castletown. Back in 1998 and even 2011, on weaker hardware it made sense, but in the late 2020s, we need 3D model buildings in the debut game of Hyrule's capital. Second, the entirety of Castletown needs to finally be fully explorable, as outside the open market square, the capital of Hyrule is 100% linear. You have the paths to the Temple of Time, up to the castle, and the back alley. Though if you look at the official 3D map of Hyrule from 1998, you can clearly see that there is more to this capital. At least several more alleys behind the back alley to reach inaccessible buildings. In fact, there are entire streets in western Castletown that could finally be explorable. The same goes for the part east of the Market Square and Royal Way, where there are at least 6 buildings and an alleyway that we could never explore before. Let's also not forget the Temple of Time that we have only been able to walk up from the front. It would only make sense to be able to walk around it 360 degrees. Combined, this will bring Ocarina's child section Castletown close to the biggest one in this series, namely Twilight Princess. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom don't really count, as that Castletown remains in ruins. A major expansion, but also staying within the original town wall. Fill the new buildings with more side quests and NPCs, shops and activities, and you could have the best Castletown in the series. Restore the cut in 1998 proper jump button, add breath climbing mechanics, and combined, you have an amazing overhaul. Imagine climbing the Temple of Time as the hero of time all the way to the top. It would be a dream come true. Same goes for the child section, Hyrule Castle, which could also see an interior section on the path to Princess Zelda added. Enough Castletown. Let's move over to how other areas could benefit from jumping and climbing mechanics, since Lon Lon Ranch could be even bigger and Hyrule Field dotted with some new houses, but also ruins from the Hyrulean Civil War. You know, Breath of the Wild style. Kakariko Village with its graveyard is fine as it is, though the trail to it and from here to Death Mountain / Goron City should be a little longer, with some extras added along the way. Not lore or timeline breaking, but just new interactive content to fill this expanded world. One that should still be closer in size to Ocarina N64 and 3D than Breath of the Wild. Remember, we still want upscaled 4K in 60 FPS. As a result, all of these areas in the adult section of the game should be accessible while riding on Epona, minus Zora River and Domain. But do you know what it was? Gerudo Valley. Now then, let's return to cut content and specifically gameplay and dungeons, since Zelda Ocarina of Time 4K Remake could restore the Light Temple. Think of it the same way as the DX version added the Color Dungeon and then the HD version of Link's Awakening brought it back. A temple that wasn't in the original version of the game, and in the case of Ocarina, there would be no Light Medallion until you free the temple from Ganondorf's clutches towards the late game as an adult, which would be absolutely perfect, especially since it would follow after an organic build-up and receiving the Light Arrows. A far better Temple of Light than Twilight Princess, which didn't even have the Light Arrows, as in that game Princess Zelda used them. That would be enough for extra dungeons, but if Nintendo also included the cut wind and ice temples as optional temples, then that would be perfection. Maybe even combined as one dungeon, as Tears showed how good a wind and ice temple in one can be. Same with the medallions from the sages granting new abilities to the Hero of Time, just like we saw with the Secret Stones. Much more cut content can also be included to bring Ocarina closer to the gameplay experience found in Breath and Tears. Like more colored tunics, where we know already of black, white and yellow, and maybe also reintegrating the grass whistle to call Epona, plus the sword beam and sword and shield horseback combat. And this is the thing, this project needs to remain true to the original, which is so good that it doesn't need drastic overhauls. Keep the story of growth minus the slight Raru change, while keeping the additions that the 3DS version added and which enhanced Ocarina in more ways than making the water temple far easier to manage. But what it should do is update some of the gameplay to bring it to the modern age. Whether it happens for the 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda in 2026 or the 30th anniversary of Ocarina of Time in 2028 doesn't really matter, as long as it delivers on the promise of a faithful and superior Hero of Time experience in 4K. A good mark for the beginning of far more 3D Zelda remakes in 4K. Plus, it might grant us the third missing game, where we play as the hero of time after Majora's Mask. But what do you think Ocarina of Time 4K on Nintendo Switch 2, if Nashweedle is right, will end up as? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell. Last but not least, a big thanks for watching to the end, and to all our patreon.com/commonrealm patrons. Special shoutouts go to Raw Producer, JC Funk, and Heroes, Cheryl, Garrett Hoy, Holly Wolf, and Kintaro. You all rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.